Alright guys, so if you cast your minds back to the first video on the Mini Maxi, or to use its less contradictory name, the Puch Dart, you may remember it started with a history lesson, and this video is going to start with a continuation of that history lesson, picking up where we left off with the demise of Puch. Incidentally, most of my knowledge of the history of Puch, including the information and pictures that you're seeing in front of you here, are from Myron's Mopeds, so please check them out. They're a very, very interesting website and very helpful in these things. So, as I mentioned before, in the twilight years of Puch, they had a bit of a mad time in the research and development department. That led them to produce several kind of Maxi variations with E50 variation engines in them, including the Dart Mini Maxi, which I've shown you in the previous video. There was also a couple more miniaturized Maxi type creations, such as the City, which I'd love to get hold of, but I don't have, unfortunately. There was also the Super Maxi, which had an improved air intake. It had a catalytic converter exhaust, and it had a much improved cylinder design with larger transfer ports. And you can tell these apart because they've got 9 fins instead of 7 on cooling fins. Same as the Mani Corrado engines, they had Super Maxi engines in them, although they were Piaggio remakes. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. There was also this creation, which is an odd looking beast, isn't it? It's kind of a combination of sleek and weird. This was the Puch Austro Daimler, also known as the Maxi Plus. And it was part designed by Ferdinand Porsche, which sort of explains why it looks so out there, really. Sadly, none of these vehicles sold in great enough numbers to prevent the demise of Puch, and consequently, the rights and equipment and tooling were sold off to 3 different companies in 3 different countries. Maxwell in Turkey produced their own version of the Maxi, which unfortunately had build quality issues and eventually gained a reputation for being unreliable, causing very poor sales. I don't think the Maxwell lasted very long. In Italy, Piaggio produced their own versions of the Maxi and the Super Maxi. This picture here is of a 90s P1 XL, which has been restyled and looks pretty smart, really. Over in India, Hero Majestic Motor Corp had made a name for themselves by producing licensed copies of various defunct motorcycles from across the world, including Hero Honda and the very Batavus-looking Majestic series, complete with a copied Laura Anchor engine. In the 90s, the Majestics were replaced with various licensed Puch products, mainly featuring variations on the E50 engine, which was licensed and built in-house by Majestic. As I'm sure you're all aware, the original Austrian Maxi had the E50 single-speed engine, which was an automatic and came in either kickstart or pedal start. They also had a 2-speed Z50 hand-change engine, and then to suit the American market, where it had to have an automatic gearbox, they had the ZA50 2-speed automatic. Hero Majestic decided that the Indian public needed more versatile engine options, and thus produced a bewildering array of E50-based randomness. Single-speed automatic, 2-speed automatic, 2-speed hand change, 3-speed hand change, semi-automatic clutchless foot change available in 2 or 3 speed, and then also all these engines were available with or without electric start and in 2 different sizes. So there's 49cc, which was 3.2 horsepower and 35 mile an hour stock, or you could also choose 65cc, which was 4.2 horsepower and 41 mile an hour stock. In 1997, Piaggio destroyed the tooling and moulds to make the Maxi frame. How dare they, the fiends. However, since 1994 they'd already been further licensing out the engine manufacturer to Motor Manit, who were making the Mani Corrado using their own in-house frame. If you want more details about the Mani Corrado, I've got a video on them because I own 2 of them and they're bloody brilliant, they're fantastic, so I'll put a link to that at the end of the video. The Mani Corrado remained in production until 2006, when the former Jawa Babetta factory where they were built was turned over to producing agricultural equipment. This left only Hero Puch still making Puch licensed products, although having said that, I've heard 2 different versions whereby either they're still making them now or they ceased production in 2005. I've no idea. In fact, this bike is particularly difficult to get information on, with it being an Indian market bike. So, they say old bikes never die, they just go to India. And with that in mind, here's an Indian-made Hero Puch. Notice any similarities to any other Puch bikes? So anyway, it looks very, very similar to the Austro Daimler. I think it probably uses the tooling that originally made the Austro Daimler. So there's a little bit of Ferdinand Porsche in there. I am struggling, like I said, to find a great deal of information about them. I'll put a link into Myron's Mopeds page on it, which sort of seems to, well, that's basically all the information I know about them. There are also some rather amusing reviews from the Indian populace about this, which I'll also link in the description because they're quite funny. It's entirely Indian made. They sold a few of them in America as well, but they're rare, and they sold like basically none in Britain, but I believe they did briefly import them. I suppose it's time for a proper look round it, but I did manage a first start a while back. There was no exhaust on it, there isn't an exhaust on it, so I'll give you a headphone warning on that and then we'll have a look round. Revs don't work, choke does. It is a fairly sad looking Puch Turbo Sport, or rather Hero Puch Turbo Sport. 5-star mags, excellent. Proper looking forks on it as well. Fork seal, so I imagine I'll have a closer look at that in future, but they've probably got fluid filled forks, which is cool. I imagine that would be a drain plug, but I don't know for sure. This is the 50cc model, I believe. That doesn't give anything away, does it? But we've got rather muddy kickstand. The exhaust's just a stub, and I thought because obviously normal Puch exhausts have got the threaded bar coming off the end of there to attach the can onto, I figured someone must cut it off, but actually I've looked online and that's just how they come. So I need some sort of slip on, maybe a bi-turbo or something to go on there, and that'll go fine. Plastic covers, which are a little bit poorly. I'll have to have a look what's under there at some point. There's one missing on the top as well, and this one's unfortunately snapped. But there's the carb. I believe it's a Paco, and I think it's a copy, an Indian-made copy of a Mikuni. It looks like it says click carb on the top, so maybe it's not a Paco, but I think most of these come with a Paco anyway. Airbox, Majestic Auto Limited. Rear brake. So it's got a clutch on the handlebars and a rear brake there, like a proper motorcycle. Foot pegs as well, and a long seat. These foot pegs are kind of cool. What else can I tell you? Turn signals, but they're not very well, but they look quite a lot like Manic Corrado ones, so I'm wondering if I can perhaps, because they're totally missing on the back, I can maybe, I've got a spare set of Manic Corrado ones I think, so they might be usable possibly. Let's go around the other side. Oh, first of all, here's the dashboard. 912 miles apparently. It's got an actual key as well, which is rather cool. The brackets that hold this on are broken, unfortunately. It's not a big job. I'm just going to have to try and see under here. I'll either plastic weld them or put little aluminium strips on or something, or I don't know, I'll find a way to hold it on. Steel mudguards, which are unfortunately rusted. Foot peg missing this side. It's bent in a little bit to the plastic mag cover. That one's bent in a bit as well, I think, by the looks of it. There's your clutch. 2-speed, the whole thing twists. It's not supposed to, so that's going to need tightening up on the handlebars, but I will investigate that in the future. And that's it really. The plastics are all a bit cracked and scabby, so I'm going to have to try and sort those out. It's got a big ass petcock on it. Yeah, I don't really know what else to tell you about it really. Oh, you can get under the seat as well. So, fuel tank still runs on premix, which I prefer to be honest. That I think is the rectifier, it might be the flasher cam. Does it say on it? Flasher, yeah, so that's the flasher cam. Just randomly shoved in that hole. I'm tempted to start it up to be honest, but it's going to be extremely loud. Might do it anyway though. The problem with it is the stand, which will quite happily go either way, so I'm assuming there's something under there that's needs attention, so I think we'll do that first, because it is quite annoying not being able to stand it up even though it's got a working stand. Well, even though it's got a stand. Okay, so here we are underneath, and I can see the problem. That's bent up and that one's bent down, and they're supposed to catch on there, but they're going straight past. So it's just a case of clobbering it with a hammer, I think. The other one is where the return spring should be as well for the stand, and that's not on there. So we may have to just run it without a spring for now. But it's a start, isn't it? That's quite interesting as well. I've seen a couple of these little split pins holding things on. There's one on the front mudguard as well. And this would appear to be a sort of alloy subframe type thing with some electrical stuff under it. So let's have a look. That'll be a coil, ignition coil. That is, don't know what that is. Probably a regulator. Exciting stuff. But I digress. Let's get this sorted so I can stand it up. So there's the hammer I need. And here's some wet concrete. Excellent. I guess I'll have to go around the up the lane and that way. I've done the first one and then turned the bike over. That took literally no effort at all. But look how bent that is. That's supposed to be flat out here. So I think this one may take a few more passes with the universal adjuster before we get it right. I think we're getting there though. Oh, look, she stands up on her own. Right, I'm quite intrigued as to what's behind these plastics, because as you can see from this one, maybe you can't, the drive chain's behind the far one on that side, but this side, I don't know, because it's not like there's a pedal chain or anything. So let's use a ridiculously small for the job screwdriver to take off a couple of these. There are some quite nice features on this, to be fair, and it's got a hand choke on the handlebars. It's got an actual key. It came with turn signals as standard. Yeah, it's got a nicer carb than usual. It's got a faster cylinder. Yeah, it's pretty good. From the pictures as well, it had a fairly beefy exhaust as standard, so that's quite cool. Anyway, look, I'm just waffling here. I'll come back to you when I've undone these nuts. So, what's behind door number 1? Will it come off? Yeah. Okay, yeah, just the brake rod. And these electrical gubbins that we could see before, and that is a... Can we read it? We can't read it, can we? Yeah, I think that's a rectifier. So, brake light switch as well. That's all incorporated into this. And one more screw, and it should take the engine cover off. And then I'm going to have to put it all back together and come back to you next time. Nothing exciting really, just some sort of nest in there. But you can really see the whole... This was what they're on about with the Porsche design of the rigid rear swing arm with the engine attached. So the body pivots here, and the engine and swing arm remain as one unit, which is interesting. I've seen a couple of cut fins there. They look like they were smashed at first, but they're not. They're cut. Very strange. I wonder if that's intentional. And there's the extremely long air intake that goes all the way. It's a 3-bolt one, and it goes all the way up into there. So right, anyway, that's enough faffing about for today. I've got to pack up now, so see you later.